Hello and welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. The CDC has stated that 1 in 44 individuals are diagnosed with autism in the US, according to the 2018 statistics. Today, my guest, Amy McFarlane, is an expert in the industry, someone who has been working in behavioral health care for 20 years and is now a business and behavior mentor to others. And so I want to welcome you, Amy, to the show today. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to ask if you could, in general, describe what is behavioral health care, because not everybody understands that term.
Well, behavioral health care, it's a big term, but
Broad, right.
as far as what I was doing, so
Yep.
specific to me and not talking about the entire industry, it was providing early intensive intervention to children with autism and other developmental disabilities. And so managing not necessarily the diagnosis, but
Yep.
intervention, the treatment, in order to provide good therapy to get them to be as independent as possible. And that's what I spent the last 20 years doing.
Absolutely. And that is definitely, like we started with there, the number of individuals diagnosed with autism is quite high. And so there's a
Yeah,
lot of need for that early intervention to support
yeah, yeah.
parents and families and the children that are receiving those diagnoses. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, like you said, behavioral health care in general is a pretty broad term. So we're not going to focus on anything outside of what you just described.
Okay.
But I just was thinking that something that not everybody really does understand when you mention that, oh, I work in behavioral health care.
Right.
What is that?
Yeah.
So, um,
Right.
but it's definitely an area of service that really helps with families in need. So,
Yeah. Yes.
as somebody who has been in that field or in business for over 20 years,
Mhm.
you've learned a lot over that course of
Absolutely.
time. I
Yes.
imagine when you started, there are things that you had no idea you would need to know
Right.
when you got there 10, 20,
Right.
15 years later, whenever that time came.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned to me is that you have to, when you are in a business and you're growing it, you really need to define your role and stick
Yes.
with it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Super important. When I started my company, I was basically a consultant working directly with the families and the children. And I love to do that. That's how I got my start. But then, and that was before insurance even covered the ABA, the behavioral
Hmm.
therapy that we did. And so when insurance covered it and the doors blew off and we grew so fast, all of a sudden I'm having to hire other behavior analysts and trying to get the infrastructure in place to support such growth. And
Yeah.
in that way, I remember a good friend of mine saying, your business is growing. Are you going to be like the head administrator, or are you going to be a behavior analyst consultant that you have been? And I thought,
Yeah.
well, can't I do both? But
Mhm.
and wouldn't that be nice if we could do both? And so
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll just see how it goes. But I think you need to have a bigger plan. Not that
Hmm.
don't necessarily know what's coming down the pike as far as the amount of clients you're going to get and all of that, but you have to decide where you're going to put your efforts as far as your role in the company, and then hire everybody else for the other roles, and then try to stick to it. I think too often owners of businesses are juggling a lot of things, and instead of maybe hiring someone, I'll just pick this up for a little while and take
Hmm.
care of that. Or and it's kind of tough. And I did find myself at some point, because we were growing so fast, getting
Yeah.
so many clients. I had assumed that day-to-day operations role, but then, oh, Amy, there's a client here and none of our behavior analysts can take it. Can you do it? And of course,
Yeah.
that's my love, right? I love
Right.
working with the families. That's why I did it. I love working with the children. And so I would change my cape and jump into that role. And that
Right.
it kind of sometimes feels like then you're split, right? You're not
Yeah.
sure where to put all the focus. And of course, you really want to put the focus in with the families, but you also have to maintain the business for your employees and everything. And so that would be a really important thing for people who have that kind of that dual role at one point, to try to decide where they're going to need to be and what other people they're going to need to bring in to support the rest of it. And, and if I can just say on one other thing that I had learned across the way, when I decided, well, I kind of not necessarily decided, but I was brought into the role of executive director to manage all of this. I still felt like, you're busy, you're spinning your wheels. And in my mind, I think you have to decide whether you are a visionary type of person in that role, or the day-to-day ops. And I realized lots of us business owners are these visionaries that see these great big, like, this is what I want the company to be. And they're more kind of having fun in that role of thinking about what it could be. And you really need a day-to-day person to work the day-to-day operations. So I found myself saying, at least I didn't have the resources to have both, like an executive director and me being visionary, but at least I knew that that was something I needed to watch out for, because the day-to-day, you have to keep up with it while your head's in the clouds thinking of all these things you could be doing. So that's kind of that's kind of a little more in depth on the role, but trying to uncover all the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you don't get somebody else in there to help out with the day-to-day or the clinical side in this case, then you're going to quickly become overwhelmed or stunted in your ability to provide that support for others. It's not going to be possible to just continue to do everything all
Absolutely.
at the same time. You're going to either drop some balls, or you're just not going to be able to continue to grow and develop as you were able to.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you had to find the right people that were going to fit into the right roles.
Right.
So talk about the importance of finding the right people, not just the right people, but the best people that you
The
were
best people.
seeking.
Absolutely. And I think as business owners and people and entrepreneurs, you think and feel like you can do all of this and you can be good at everything. And so you're looking to be the best, but the best type of leader is the one who find the people that are even better than they are for the roles. And I was always in awe of my people that I had put that did such a great job. My clinical director was awesome, and she was way better than me in certain things, so you have to kind of let your pride down and realize that the best of leaders are the ones that find the best people and put them to their potential, and they can sprint right ahead of you, and we're all happy for it because it makes the organization better. And you want to make sure you put them in the right role too, because there's often times where you might find a person and boy, you need to fill this role, but this person might be better for here. You don't want to take a person that's not meant for a certain role just because they're good and just put them in the role. You really have to find the best people and put them in the right seats. And if you don't, then you are dealing with it later.
Yeah. Did you ever have to deal with that later?
Yes. Yes. And I won't go into any details, but I mean, that initially sometimes the easiest thing that you can do is make a decision, not the best one, but it's done. But in a few months, you'll be revisiting it, and it's harder then. So make sure that you're making the right decisions, putting people in the right seats right from the beginning.
Yeah. So you might not get it right the first time, but acknowledging that's your goal, that you can correct it later if you have to. But
absolutely.
Otherwise you're prolonging an issue that might continue to persist and bring a bigger issue down the line. So
that's true. We've all done it.
Yes, absolutely. I think that any business that is in existence has hired somebody and then realized later that wasn't the best fit. Or maybe over time, just as growth occurs, that person was no longer the best fit for that position, and it became clear, not always to that person, but to others, that it just wasn't the best fit. So it had to be decided.
Yeah, absolutely.
And along the way, you also get experience, and you can share that experience with others, as well as learn from others that you
Mhm.
are working with, whether it's your coworkers, other companies,
Yeah.
even competitors. And that's
Mm.
something that you have found was beneficial. And
Yes.
how what was that was gained from those interactions and those sharing of experiences, and
Yeah.
how yeah,
Yeah, I'll back up to my pre-autism world. I
yeah,
was in marketing and sales.
yeah,
And and thinking of competitors was like, how are you going to get the edge, and how can you get
mhm,
up on them, and almost like in a sneaky sense. But
right,
but with my company and meeting you, for example,
mhm,
technically a competitor, I found that everybody was there to support everybody else, regardless of whether you were competing for the same clients. Or
yeah,
it was so important to meet these people and mix with them and share your experiences, and then gain
mhm,
insight from them. And meeting you was awesome. And I think we had great times sharing
yeah,
what we're doing, what works, what doesn't work. And I just think it's super important to to keep that door open. And maybe just
yeah,
in this industry, it's not as cutthroat as where what I had come
yeah,
from.
right,
And really, when I started, like I had said, there was no insurance coverage or anything.
yeah,
So we had to, when insurance came, everybody's scrambling. Everybody has to get in networks they had never imagined having to go through that. And so
right,
essential to find other people who are going through the same thing and share it.
yeah,
It's not like you're giving away these super sensitive secrets or anything. We're
right,
all just trying to do the right thing, do it
yeah,
ethically, all for the client, to better the client. So yeah, that's kind of my take on
yeah,
support and competitors. And also along the way, and you meet people that you might have long-term
mhm,
relationship with, which is important. Now that I'm retired from the business, not necessarily working in that industry, I have a
yeah,
wealth of information and I'd like to share it. I don't want to just
right,
go away. And so,
yeah,
I've got people that I've met throughout the years, and
mhm,
some of them have come back to me and said, could you mentor me and help me with this or help me with that? And
yeah,
it kind of it keeps you it 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 keeps you kind of in the game. I mean, you were in it for
yep,
20 years and then you're gone. So you've met these people, whether they're competitors or colleagues or company
right,
members, and you can share what you have learned with them. And hopefully that
abs
gives you a sense of satisfaction.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yep, while
Yeah.
you're in it, it gives you that additional satisfaction, the relationship building. You also have that opportunity for some reciprocity. If you're willing to share information, that other
Mhm.
person is more likely willing to also
Yes,
communicate with you on things that you might need some support with too.
absolutely.
And
Yep.
for anyone that does not know, I also was the owner of an ABA therapy company working with children with autism
Mhm.
over a period of about 8 years. And so we
Mhm.
had a lot of good opportunities
Yeah.
over those years. Amy and I could
Yeah.
collaborate and to share information and to
Yes.
learn from one another.
Yes.
So yeah, so
Mhm.
the value is added while you're running the business, but now is even extended beyond that to where
Yes.
you are able to share your
Mhm.
experience with others, that you're no longer having your direct involvement with the business operation,
Right.
but you can work in collaboration with somebody else who is, and get
Absolutely.
value from
It's
that and get
very
value.
rewarding. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
definitely.
rewarding. Yes.
And as you mentioned, after being in a stage of retirement, it's not like you now have all this stuff that you're going to do that you don't want to do anything with what you did in the
Right.
past.
Right.
And you're used to always being so busy and productive all the time, so you feel
Yeah,
like you need to do something,
absolutely.
and that's what brought satisfaction and joy. So you mentioned it already, but you have been continuing to do some mentoring
Right.
and business coaching, and
Yep.
just
Yes.
as something that comes up along the side. So
Yes.
if
Yes. Enjoyable. Mhm.
yeah, well, I have a question that I like to ask any guest that comes on the show. Well, it's two of them really, and I think the first, I feel
Okay.
like you've shared success tips that I'm going to go ahead and skip that one because it's
Okay.
usually the success tips learned along the way, and you did an
Sure.
excellent job at already sharing
Oh,
those.
good.
But in regards to the second, if
Okay.
you were to have been given, let's say while you were still in business operations,
Okay.
um, if you were have been given $1 million to invest in your business
Mhm.
and didn't have any restrictions to it,
Mhm.
what would
Ooh,
you have done?
nice. Yeah. Well, I draw from initially my experience as a
Hmm.
parent with a newly diagnosed child with autism, and we won't go
Yeah,
there right now. He's 26, he's doing well,
yeah,
but the support that families need is still so it's a need that we
yeah.
help people, and so they don't feel so isolated. And if I had all this money, I would go back into business and try to come up with ways um, to include families with autism in the community. And I've been thinking,
Hmm.
at one point I was so enjoying my new like exercise routine in the morning and all of
Yeah,
that, but I was still working with clients, and sure enough, they can't get out to go to the health club because of the
sure.
needs of their children, and they can't, or they can't go to church because the child isn't ready for that. And I so
Hmm.
wanted to create either some kind of respite, real good respite going into the home,
Yep.
or even I was thinking if we could have like childcare rooms where we could staff that so
Yeah.
parents and family members could go into the community. They are not so isolated. They would have a
Right.
place for their children to be where they would feel safe to take care of
Yep.
themselves, to just to be like everybody else and be able
Yep.
to go to the grocery store and all of that. So like I think if I had $1 million, I think I would start trying to figure out how we could bring families in out of isolation
Yeah.
into those things where they feel part of the community and they're getting some good self-care and not so isolated. So
Yep.
that would probably, if I were still doing that, I would be
Yeah.
focusing, I think, on that.
Yeah. So creating those ways to help families to have
Yes.
their opportunities to additionally have self-care time
Yes.
and
Yep.
support that they may not otherwise have. So not everybody has
Right.
family members around or friends that are willing to help. Or,
Absolutely.
as you mentioned, kids do get older, and
Right.
sometimes those kids they might need a lot more support, and it
Absolutely.
becomes more challenging for somebody that used to be able to or willing to be able to come in and help out. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
no, I mean that would be an amazing offering to be able
Yeah.
to add that, and I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a need for more support in that area.
Yes,
Well,
definitely.
if anyone wanted to get a hold of you and reach out to discuss business, mentorship, and maybe they're in that similar field and they are
Yeah.
looking for some additional support,
Okay.
how would they reach out to you? What would be the best way?
Well, they could email me, and my
Okay.
email is Amy, AMY, at behaviorbiz.com.
Okay.
And yep, and you've got it up there. So yep, that's it. And of course, I mean, I can give phone numbers or all of that, but I'll be able to talk to someone right off the bat if they email.
Perfect. All
Mhm.
right. Amy at behaviorbiz.com. So if you want
Yes.
to reach out to find more information about what Amy's currently doing,
Yep.
then do please reach out. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to thank you for joining me today and sharing a
Mhm.
little bit about your experience. I think we can all gain insights from those that have done it before us and
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
motivation through their work as well. And I've always
Great.
been impressed by the work you've done, as well
Oh,
as appreciated that willingness to be supportive and collaborative. So thank you for that as well.
you're welcome. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.